Dear student, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is Arafat from FEI Higher Secondary Institute Navagam. Today I am with chapter number 6. Chapter is about management in natural resources. In this chapter, I have discussion about the topic is wildlife resources, threat to the wildlife, importance of wildlife resources, and how we conserve the wildlife resources. ये आज हमारे टॉपिक्स होंगे डिस्कशन के लिए. तो it is 10th standard biology. Now let us we have a discussion about the wildlife resources. If we talk about the life in any form, life of plants, animals, human beings, birds, when this life is found in any natural habitat, here the natural habitat can be the forests, then we can say this life is a wildlife. When there is a possible survival of life of plants, life of animals, life of human beings, or we can say the life of the birds, variety of the living beings, when they are found in their natural habitat, I mean here forests, then we call them the wildlife. This is the wildlife. This wildlife is of wide variety. It is variable in shape, in size, variable in the habitat, variable in the reproduction, variable in the ecological interactions, variable in adaptation. There are the variation is seen in the forests. That means we can say the India-like country is unique in geographical locations. Unique in geographical locations with wide variety of variation in climatic conditions, because of that these two there is the biodiversity. This biodiversity are seen as in the wildlife, and wildlife are associated with the forests. And now it is then previous discussion we talk about much more about the forest resources. Important is the conservation of forests, because the wildlife is associated with the forests. Because of the wildlife there is forests, and because of the forest there is the possible wildlife. That means in India we can say there are the 75,000 different species. In the country like India, they are found in wide diversity of forests. It is not a joke. This number of species, 75,000 different species are found in different forests in the India-like country, which is unique in geographical locations, and there is a wide variation in the climatic conditions. Then our country India is diverse in biodiversity. There is a variation in the wildlife associated with that forests. Then we can say here the talk about the wildlife की बात हम कर लेंगे. They are productive. हमें इनसे बहुत कुछ मिलता है. As we get the economical economical benefits. And we have in the, if we talk about the ancient times, at the people make much more benefit of the wildlife resources, as remains very associated with the wild plants, with the wild animals. As we talk about the wild plants, they remains very useful. Wild animals also we obtain the products, obtain the other materials which are used in day-to-day life, and there is a economical benefits associated with the wildlife, as many wild plants are yet to known for their medicinal value, decorative value, that is other purpose. These plants are in use. That means these plants importantly are in the medical value, in medical values, that is the importance. Also they have the aesthetical values. That means they are some wild plants are grown in wild, as they are making the decorative plants. Here in the view, in the commercial benefit, there are the commercial benefits, and also there is the ecological benefits. वो वाइल्ड लाइफ के साथ साथ जो वाइल्ड लाइफ है, इट हैज इकोनॉमिकल इम्पोर्टेंस. Also there is a ecological benefit. In the ecological, because of the wildlife, there is the maintenance of the ecological balance of that area. आपने देखा होगा कि there is the food chain, food web, how one community is dependent on the other community for food to get the energy, as how plants and animals are associated in exchanging of the gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, as the soil is conserved by the plant roots, as the animal जो एक्सक्रीटा होता है, उनका जो फेशियल मैटर होता है, then there is a microbial decomposition, death of the animals take place, then decomposed grass, how they become the humus, they then addition of the organic material to their soil, then their soil becomes fertile, they are enriched by the humus that contains the inorganic nutrients, they are useful for the growth and for the production of the plants, as the plants are the producers in a food chain, how other herbivores, carnivores, tertiary consumers are totally dependent on the producers, as the producers have capability to take the directly the utilization of the solar energy, and in the food chain how the sun's energy converts into chemical energy in plants, and how this energy is being transferred in a food chain at different trophic levels. There are the ecological balance, soil conservation, interaction between the plants, animals, and there is the interaction between the birds causing the pollination, cross pollination. Insects are involved in the cross pollination. Here dispersion of seed takes place by the animals, and the plants play important role in regulating the hydrological cycle, other cycles, biogeochemical cycles. How these plants then they conserve the soils. Then if we talk about the silviculture, if we talk about this silviculture, by the silviculture there is a culturing of the soil by the plantation, by cultivating the plants to that region. This we can say there is also the economical benefits because of the wild. Productive तो है ही ये, they are productive, as we kill the wild animals for food, for other economical sales of the fur, their scents, their teeth, their skin, their leather, their feather is very important the elephant is task ivory जिसका medicinal economical use है, medicinal use है. तो how they are the horns होता है उनके सींग, how they are utilized in the preparation of the medicines, medical use है, and the aesthetical use है, decorative purpose के लिए. They are also they are the wildlife is important as they are the they mark the they are the markable animals. They become the national animals and are notified, and they are have relation with the religion, relation with the culture, relation with the literature. They are very important in view of talking about the aesthetical value of the wildlife, wild plant, wild animals, wild birds. If we talk about now, we talk about the importance. What are the importance of the wildlife resources? Importance, इसकी क्या इम्पोर्टेंस रहती है, तो आपको इसमें ज़्यादा खुलासा ज़्यादा पता लगेगा. हाउ वाइल्ड लाइफ आर इम्पोर्टेंट टू अस इन आवर सर्वाइवल. यू कैन से अभी मैं दे आर दिस वाइल्ड प्रेजेंस ऑफ वाइल्ड लाइफ इन द फॉरेस्ट एरियाज आर रेस्पॉन्सिबल इन मेंटेनिंग द इकोलॉजिकल बैलेंस. अभी मैं डिस्कस कर रहा था इसके बारे में, मेंटेनिंग द इकोलॉजिकल बैलेंस. You know that in a food chain the number of the carnivores are checked by the top carnivores, as the herbivores number in a food chain is checked by the number of carnivores. That herbivores producers are already huge and abundant in number. They should be in regulating the food chain or food web. As we can say that there is an ecological balance in an environment. It is most important importance of the wildlife. As the wildlife, you can say the jo wild plants in a wildlife, there are the wild plants, and how the wild plants are supportive. They are the supportive in a food chain, as they act as food chains या food webs. हम बात कर लेंगे food chains, food webs, how they are the producers. They are the producers of the food, how they help in the transfer of energy. In the view, there is the maintenance of the food chain, there is the initiation of the food chain, food web by because of the wild plants, and every food chain starts by the producers, as I mean the plants. Then we can say about importance of wildlife. They help the naturalists, जो natural lover होते हैं, naturalists to study the living habitat, living survival of wild organisms in their surrounding, how it becomes a task, it becomes a literature, a study material. It becomes a study material, we can say, to the naturalists to know the living survival of the wild organisms in their surrounding, how they adapt themselves, how they are adapted in a natural circumstances, under the natural conditions, how they make their life possible there, how they survival, how they have feeding habit, adaptation in view of survival, mode of reproduction, mode of hunting, and mode of, we can say, sickle tactics. We can say the behavior of the animal in his nature, in his natural circumstances, how he behaves as a naturalist. इनके लिए ये एक स्टडी मटीरियल भी प्रूव होता है यहाँ. They know much more about this world, the existence of the primitive life. इनको नेचुरल अंदाज में इनको सारा कुछ इनको मिलता है. Naturalists keep the great affection, love with the natural beauty, natural environment, natural conditions, natural plants, natural animals. and the natural soil they deals with, as it is for them, it becomes them a study material to know the life existence, life survival. बहुत कुछ हम सीख सकते हैं नेचर में, नेचर के सर्कमटेंसेस को, नेचर के प्रोसेसिंग को। जब अगर हमें अपने आप को एक एफिशिएंट बनाना हो, अपने आप को एक एडेप्टिव बनाना है किसी फैक्टर के अगेंस्ट एनी फैक्टर, we would like to be a intelligent genius, and you have to go to through the natural processing, natural condition, natural circumstances. You know much more about them. As the naturalists have much more love, they have great affection towards the wild animals, wild plants, wild birds, they wild rivers, soil, rocks, they are much lover of. If we talk about the fourth one as the wildlife जो है, wildlife इसकी अगर हम possibly reserve रखें, reserve they becomes a gene bank for producing, it becomes a gene bank as the reservoir of the genes. If we possibly reserve the wildlife of plants, animals, birds, it becomes a gene bank. Then we can make the good yield of plants and animals. Then we can say by having a process of selection, we select, sometimes we select the wild plants, we select wild animals, and for having that characters, हम चाहते कि ये हमारे डोमेस्टिक एनिमल में ये कैरेक्टर आना चाहिए, इसके फीचर्स हमारे डोमेस्टिक क्रॉप में आना चाहिए, तो हम उस वक्त साइंटिफिक अंदाज में उसको सिलेक्ट कराते, एंड देयर इज द प्रोसेस ऑफ द hybridization, there is a hybridization. By have a particular selection of a particular wild plant, wild animals, if that is desirable, and we have a need of those features, ये plant इसमें हमें there should be a cross breeding, there should be a mix up of characters. It is the concept of hybridization, the mix up of characters between the wild and the domestic. इससे पहले मैंने आपको पढ़ाया 9th क्लास इम्प्रूवमेंट इन फूड रिसोर्सेज, वहाँ पे भी हम कॉन्सेप्ट को यूटिलाइज किए कि हमें कुछ डोमेस्टिक क्रॉप जो है, जो हमारे डोमेस्टिक, उनको हम वाइल्ड कैरेक्टर्स समटाइम्स वो इंट्रोड्यूस एज टू बिकम देम हेल्दी, स्ट्रॉन्ग, डिजीज फ्री, डिजीज रेजिस्टेंट, and yield a good quality of food material, and they also becomes a gene bank for good features, high quality features can be introduced in our cultivation, in our crops that is domesticated. Then also wildlife जो है, इसकी importance क्या है? wildlife की importance है, these are resources of, you can say, the money material, as the fur, as the skin, as the musk deer की बात हम कर लेंगे. Musk, it is a highly scent produced. They have the musk glands in the musk deer. It is very rare in the Jammu and Kashmir, and endangered species. That these for the ivory, as the elephantus tusk has a decorative purpose, medicinal use, and if we talk about the horns, they are leather. We can make the skin leather, and some feathers of birds, and have the use. Then they have also, there is a demand for the, if we talk about the wild plants, timber, we can say that fuel wood, etc. are obtained, and the fodder. We talk about what we get by the wild plants, wild seeds. We get the wild seeds, wild fruits, wild vegetables, fruits and vegetables we get by the by way of the plants, by way of the animals, we get a fur, skin, muscle. These items, the hooves of the animals, has utilization and much more. We get much more benefits of them. And then they have the commercial use. These resources are used on the commercial basis. They have a sale, and there is an economic standard associated with these products. For that, in the earlier time, if we talk about the earlier time, there was the poaching, hunting, and killing of these animals for this purpose, in order to obtain such products, such items, and for their commercial purpose they have been utilized without care about of the laws, environmental laws, forest laws, wildlife protection act, without any care of. There is a black marketing of these products, and there is a killing and poaching, hunting of for wild animals as plants and animals, as they are the we have distracted. In this way they have the importance. Now what have the threat, what is the threat to the wildlife? Threat to wildlife, which is an important question. Threat to wildlife, there are the various threat towards the wildlife. अभी मैं बात कर रहा था hunting. There is a hunting and killing of wild animals, and there is a destruction of habitat of. When they lost their habitat, they lost their dwelling places, and now they will not remain, they will reduce in number, they will not reproduce, they will not feed. तो इस तरह का हमने इनमें डिक्लाइन लाए हैं. तो हमने इकोनॉमिकल कंसिडरेशन, हमने अपना इकोनॉमिक्स बढ़ाए, अपने पैसे पे ध्यान दिया, and we have a thorough rough sale of the product produced by the wildlife. As the products are generated by them, we make a market sale of those products जो मैंने अभी mention किया है. इकोनॉमिक तौर पे we becomes economically greed, and we have a commercial, on the commercial basis we have the sale of those items, products, and on the good money, on the good economic standards, we kill them, we hunt them, we poach, there is a poaching, hunting, and we degraded their habitat. In this way their number these days are decline in number, and now the wild plants are in a red data book in the list of endangered, vulnerable, threatened. Some species have been vanished on the surface of the earth, as categorized as the extinct animals. There is the extinction, threatened, vulnerable, अलग अलग कैटेगरी के आज हमारे रेड बुक डाटा में इनको लेबल किया गया है. वाइल्ड प्लांट्स, वाइल्ड बर्ड्स, वाइल्ड एनिमल्स, वाइल्ड माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स, बहुत सारे नंबर्स में हमने इनको लेबल किया है. ऑल्सो वी कैन से द अदर कॉज टू अदर थ्रेट इज द ओवरग्रेजिंग. ये भी है एक थ्रेट वाली बात. ओवरग्रेजिंग ऑफ ग्रासलैंड्स. हमने अपने कैटल को बार बार उस जगह को ग्रेजिंग कराए, जिसके वजह से वहाँ सॉइल की देयर इज अ सॉइल इरोजन, सॉइल हैज बीन इरोडेड, एंड द वाइल्ड लाइफ एसोसिएटेड विद दैट हैज बीन destroyed. when the vegetation cover वहाँ पे नहीं रही, तो herbivores का नंबर डिक्लाइन हुआ है. फूड चेन इज अफेक्टेड. जो कार्निवोरस ऑब्वियसली वो भी अफेक्ट हुए हैं. तो top carnivores obviously they are also dependent on in a food chain. There is a link between the different organization of organisms. When it is the overgrazing by the domestic animals on the mountain grassland, जो mountains पे grass है, या हम कहते हैं meadows या grassland, so we can say बार बार उस जगह को grazing कराना by our domestic animals, it is also threat to the wildlife. Also the wildlife, there is threat is the forest fire. And forest fire, they are sometimes it is natural disaster, sometimes it is the man-made tactics, the efforts that they cause, they जानबूझ के वो आग दे देते फायर को, फॉरेस्ट को जला देते. lot of the plants are damaged, wild plant, wild seeds, wild animals are affected, largely destroyed. Their destruction takes place, their number has been is reduced to a large extent. In this way they are threatened by the forest fire. How now, what are the conservation measures of the wildlife? How we can conserve now? What are the conservation towards steps to take conservation? Conservation. फिर अब हम इनको कंजर्व करना, अब हमें थोड़ा नेगेटिव अप्रोच पे ज़्यादा ध्यान नहीं देना, पॉजिटिव अप्रोच पे और आना है हमें इनको. देयर शुड बी अ sustainable benefits of the wildlife resources, as the future generation has to know about our the wildlife resources, plants, animals. Therefore we have to take the setups by the government organization, by the semi-government organization or the voluntary organization, so should be involved in the conservation of the wildlife resources. As when we are going to protect our forest areas, already the preserved forest areas, when we are going to control them, regulate them, then obviously we are controlling and regulating the number of the wildlife. And we can say the protection of here, then it is mandatory we have the protection of, it is a importance objective in view of the conservation protection of natural habitat. ये एक important point है और important step है. When we are conserving the forests, जो natural habitat ही है, तो we are then conserving obviously the wildlife. Here then second is the maintenance of already preserved forest areas जो भी already defined, already demarked forest areas है, खास तौर उनको आप कम से कम maintain करिए. मेंटेन किस लिहाज से आपको करिए, आपको पता है you have the forests in view of, you have to, there is a national parks, in view of national parks में आपने इनको maintain किया है. wildlife sanctuaries में, wildlife sanctuary, biosphere reserves है, biosphere reserves. या बात कर लेंगे zoos, you will take the zoos या botanical gardens, you talk about these etc. Now in these areas they have the forest occupied, then you are to a great extent, when you are then maintaining and regulating the already preserved forest areas, you make the laws, you restrict the human activities in these, and there is a full-fledged enforcement of the Environmental Policy Act, Wildlife Preservation Act, then Tree Preservation Act. Then we can maintain the abundant number of the wildlife, plants and animals and birds etc., other resources, and conservation of soil as well. Then this is, you have to go to this setup. These are the most important and the golden setup towards the conservation of the wildlife resources. Third one is then, here I talk about the protection through legislation. Protection through legislation. Legislation. By enactment of laws, forest laws, wildlife act. तो उन एक्ट्स को हम अगर हम यहाँ पे मैन एंड बायोस्फीयर जो हमने इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे मतलब सिटीज यूनेस्को जो इंटरनेशनल लेवल्स पे हमने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बनाई, कन्वेंशंस बनाए, उनके तौर पे हम इनको वाइल्ड लाइफ को आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं, कंजर्व कर सकते हैं विद इन इट्स नेचुरल हैबिटेट्स to a great extent. According to this protection by the legislation, that means by the enforcement of the laws, there are the CITES, CITES, that is the Convention on International Trade for Endangered Species. Trade in endangered, ये क्या होता है? Convention on international trade in endangered जो ऑलरेडी एंडेंजर्ड स्पीशीज है उनके लिए कानून बनाया गया इंटरनेशनल तौर पे. Now we have to ban according to the introduction of the CITES in and it has been regulated in order to regulate the not wild fauna, flora and wild fauna को regulate करने के लिए there is the CITES, and it has been introduced in the 1976. Then it is one of the main setup has been taken at the on the international level. Then introduction of this. Then second is in this, there is the second point, then B part, that is Indian Board of Wildlife. इसके तहत भी हमने कंजर्व किया है वाइल्ड लाइफ स्पीशीज को. इसको शॉर्ट फॉर्म IBWL, इंडियन बोर्ड ऑफ वाइल्ड लाइफ इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया है और इसको एस्टेब्लिश in 1952 in गारज से in the conservation of the wildlife resources. It supports. Then there is a Wildlife Protection Act. ये ancient both time से हुआ है ये act in a function. Wildlife Protection Act 1972 में इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया है in all the states of India में ये इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया है. इस गारज से कानून में इसको लॉ एक्ट बनाया गया in order the regulating the number of the wildlife, wild plants, wild animals, and there is the punishment, strict punishment, any harassment, any hunting, any poaching, illegal killings, illegal destruction of the trees, land areas, forest areas. According to the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, this act has been adopted by all the states in India. Then there is a proper restriction when we follow the proper laws. Then third one is the man and biosphere. There is the introducing of the man and biosphere. That is, it is also MAB under the body of the UNESCO. Under the body of the UNESCO इसको आइडेंटिफाई किया गया है और इनिशिएट कब लिया गया 1971 में. इस गारज से हम इसको यहाँ रेगुलेट कर देंगे क्या बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व्स को रेगुलेट मेंटेन करने के लिए इन ऑर्डर टू रिजर्व द बायोस्फीयर. आपको पता है कि जो बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व्स है इट इज रिच इन फ्लोरा एंड इंडिया में जितने भी बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व्स है which are rich in animal species, plant species, in the insects, in the birds, तो उनको हमें नर्च करना है, रेगुलेट करना, मेंटेन करना है अंडर द मैन एंड बायोस्फीयर. इसको भी इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे आइडेंटिफाई किया है एंड बीन सपोर्टेड. देन there is the introduction of different projects, Project Elephant, Project Lion. Then fourth is the introduction of projects, that is projects in different states in India, in different states in India, जहाँ पे अलग अलग वो स्टेट लेवल पे वो एनिमल एक शान रखती है, एक उसकी रैंक है, उस मतलब ज्यादा एबेंडेंट पाया जाता है हिंदुस्तान के उस रीजन में, उसी रीजन में उसको कल्चर किया गया, रेगुलेट कंजर्व किया गया है बाय लॉन्चिंग द वेरियस प्रोजेक्ट. वी हैव द टाइगर प्रोजेक्ट, जैसे कि यहाँ प्रोजेक्ट टाइगर इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया 1 अप्रैल 1973. गिर लायन जो गुजरात में है प्रोजेक्ट, इसको लॉन्च किया गया, इंट्रोड्यूस किया 1974. राइनोस कंजर्वेशन 1987 में, प्रोजेक्ट एलिफेंट 1972 में. इस स्पेशल प्रोजेक्ट को इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया है, इन प्रोजेक्ट को एस्टेब्लिश किया गया है जो भी जितने भी एंडेंजर्ड स्पीशीज है, ताकि हम इनको एंडेंजर्ड स्पीशीज है उनको हम क्या करें, उनकी पॉसिबली कंजर्वेशन हो अपने ही हैबिटेट में जहाँ पे ये उस रीजन में पाए जाते हैं, उनको इनका हम ज्यादा रेगुलेट करें, कंजर्व करें, ताकि ये एनहेंस हो इन नंबर. देन इन द व्यू ऑफ they are conserved, preserved in their protected areas, in the view, in the opinion, and in taking into consideration their number should be abundant. They are in the category of the endangered species. Then there is the preservation of trees act. इसको इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया है 1975 में, फिर इसको अमेंड किया गया है, नया बनाया गया है. देयर इज द अमेंडमेंट अगेन, देयर इज इट इज अमेंडमेंट देयर इज इट इज अमेंडमेंट अगेन इन 1996 में इसको वापस अमेंडमेंट किया है इन द to check the falling of trees. There is the law against the cutting of the trees and decline the trees number. Then there should be also, according the preservation of tree act, first of take in the period of 1975, and again it is amendment take place 1996 in view of regulating the number of trees, regulating the number of trees in that region, and planting new trees, we can say planting new plants in an identified land areas. जो हमें लगे कि this land area is devoid of trees, plants, then we have to mark that land area. We have possibly make our efforts strong to have the plantation drive there, to make the abundant number of the trees, as the trees are known as the green lungs, supply us oxygen gas, as makes the surrounding very clean and green and pollution free. Then importance is should be given in planting the trees, and that area becomes the greenery areas because of the preservation of, when there is the